We're waiting on just others to join us, but we will go ahead from here. So Jackie.
All right. All right. Good morning, everyone. I'm Jackie Biggs, the Engaged Congregations and Communities Officer here at the Health Fund. And I've had the pleasure of emailing with many of you and getting to meet a few of you virtually through our Healthy Congregations training. I've also had the wonderful opportunity since I've started here to read through all of your team's Healthy Congregations program reflections and project plans for the year ahead. And I continue to feel really inspired by all the work you're doing to support holistic health in your congregations and in your communities. And because I've had the opportunity to read through all of those, I know many of you are already doing so much in your communities to creatively and lovingly support food access. Things from all over the board, from blessing boxes to little pantries on site to your summer lunch programs, hosting and supporting local food pantries, providing and delivering healthy meals to those in need. It's truly incredible all the things that your teams are doing and all the creative ways you're doing it. And at the same time, we've been hearing from many of you that the need has been and is continuing to grow. Federal SNAP funding delays and policy changes are leaving families without food. And we know that churches are uniquely positioned to respond with care, compassion, and purpose. And that's why we are here today. Our webinar today is focused on a special grant opportunity that is designed to help your congregation address hunger in meaningful and sustainable ways, really to amplify the work you're already doing, both within your congregation and in your broader community. Our hope is that you leave the session today with a sense of readiness, maybe some fresh ideas and some practical resources that will help you expand and amplify the incredible work you're already doing around food access. We also hope that you'll feel inspired to gather with your team and to develop a proposal that reflects your congregation's unique gifts and your vision. This webinar really just marks the beginning of some more focused efforts to support you in this food access work. We'll be developing additional resources and supports for your team along the way and as we go. And we're here to walk alongside you in this journey toward greater food security. The session is especially designed for our Healthy Congregations team members and clergy, and we're so grateful for the leadership and care that you are bringing to your communities. So with that, we'll kick off our webinar today by hearing from two of our incredible partners at Kansas Appleseed and Harvesters. First, we'll hear from Haley, the Thriving Campaign Director at Kansas Appleseed. And Haley will share some insights into the current landscape around food access across Kansas and help us to better understand the broader context in which all of our congregations here are working. And then we'll get to hear from Karen, the Public Policy and Advocacy Advisor at Harvesters. Karen will offer some practical ways that your congregation can support food access in your community, drawing from Harvesters' deep experience in hunger relief. And then after that, Katie from the Health Fund will hop on and walk us through the details of a mini grant opportunity, what it is, how to apply, and how it can support your work. And also just a quick note to share that Katie, Jeff, and I are working really closely together on all of this work to support healthy congregations. Katie is going to be leading this effort to start as I continue to transition into my role, and we'll be taking on more of a role as we continue on. So you'll likely be hearing from both of us. And just know we're all in really close contact. So no matter who you get in touch with, we'll make sure that we get you what you need. Then we'll wrap up with a Q&A session. So please feel free to drop in your questions in the chat as they come up and as we go, and we'll keep those and address them at the end. Also, just so you know, we're recording this webinar and we'll share it back with you. So you'll have it as a resource and we'll share it out more broadly with the Healthy Congregations listserv. So you'll have the information and please feel free to share it with others that you know would be interested in having that. And with that, I will hand it over to you, Haley.
Thanks, Jackie. I just want to start by saying how much I love the Health Fund and I love working with you all. You are incredible partners, and I really appreciate you all allowing both Karen and I to be here today. So before we begin, I want to share a little bit about Kansas Appleseed. We are a nonpartisan, nonprofit organization dedicated to the belief that Kansans working together can build a state full of thriving, inclusive, and just communities. We're working towards a future where all Kansans have the resources they need to thrive, raise healthy families, participate fully in their communities, and benefit from fair and effective systems of justice. I oversee all of our food access work at Kansas Appleseed, which just means that I really focus on federal and state policy around the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, SNAP, what I'll be talking to you all about today. And then I also work on child nutrition programs. So you may have heard of the free summer meals, some of the after school meal programs, things like that. We're working to make better, more effective policy changes in that regard. So I first wanted to talk about what is SNAP. SNAP stands for the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, and it really is our nation's most effective anti-hunger program at helping families afford groceries each month. The benefit amount for SNAP depends on a household's income, expenses, and family size, so it's tailored to meet real needs. Benefits are loaded onto an EBT card, and it works just like a debit card, but it can be used for food at grocery stores, farmers markets, and other approved retailers. Here in Kansas, about 187,000 Kansans rely on SNAP. It's also very important to remember that SNAP doesn't just help families, it strengthens our local economies too. Every dollar in SNAP benefits spent at grocery stores and other places across Kansas generates more than $1.50 in economic activity. So, like the moment we're in, where benefits are delayed or reduced and delayed, that impact ripples far beyond just households across the state. Next slide, please. I also wanted to talk about, when we talk about SNAP, we should remember the people that we're talking about. Nearly 2/3 of Kansans on SNAP are in families with children. These are kids who just depend on this support to start their day with breakfast and go to bed with dinner, right? Over a third of households include an older adult or a person with disability. And also, I'm blanking on my notes. And then almost half are working families, people clocking in every day, often full-time, but still coming up short because wages have not kept up with the cost of living. When I think of folks on SNAP, I think of you and me. I think of our family and our friends, their teachers' aides, CNAs, grocery clerks, warehouse workers, people who keep Kansas running. They are seniors, like my grandmother, stretching fixed incomes, parents juggling bills, and disabled Kansans who can't get out but need this support. So when benefits are delayed or reduced, it's those families who are facing the reality here. It's neighbors and classmates and coworkers. We really are, when we talk about SNAP, we're talking about people who are the backbone of our state, and they're really being left out in the cold right now. Next slide, please. So where are we at and what's at stake with the government shutdown? We've talked a little bit about SNAP. What I haven't mentioned is how much in SNAP goes out every single month here in Kansas. It's $33 million. And that still has not gone out in November, with no end in sight on when it will go out. That means that 187,000 Kansans are waiting on their benefits, and they need them immediately. Each day of delay adds to this hardship. We know that local grocery stores are seeing less traffic. Our food bank friends are overwhelmed and stretched thin. And most importantly, Kansans across the state are wondering how they're going to pay for their groceries. Next slide, please. Okay, I want to give a caveat on this slide that our staff attorney put it together. So if it looks different and it looks like a gobbledygook, know that it's because a lawyer did it and not me. But I do want to talk a little about what's happening legally. So last week, federal courts in Massachusetts and Rhode Island ordered the USDA to use contingency funds. These are funds that were put in place years ago that are just like an emergency stockpile for SNAP. They're meant to keep SNAP operating during the shutdown. But instead of following the intent of these rulings, the Trump administration has decided to only release partial benefits for November, with no clear updates on when benefits may go out. We're very concerned about this. Well, I'll talk a little bit about the partial payments later, but I think what I'd most express here is that payments have not gone out at all. So when we're talking about benefits getting to families families, we already don't know when that's going to happen. And that's a really big problem. Next slide, please. So after these federal court orders, the USDA and the Trump administration had to respond. On Monday, the administration released guidance about how to issue November benefits. You all may remember State Representative Patrick Penn. He is now leading the United States Department of Agriculture's Food and Nutrition Services. So he is actually in charge of this effort. And here's what the USDA guidance says. It authorizes partial payments using those contingency funds that I just talked about, and it directs states to calculate benefits based only on the maximum allotments for a household size. Most importantly, it doesn't give a timeline. So there really is no clear answer for when Kansans will actually receive these minimal funds and when families can see that in their account. That is what is so frustrating to me. It's so frustrating to other advocates, and it's especially frustrating to those who utilize this program. Next slide, please. So what this confusing guidance really means. And I shout out to my colleague on the call, Karen, because she helped put this together. The complicated way in which the USDA is determining those partial payments means many individuals and families will receive less than 50% of their expected November SNAP benefits, while others may receive nothing at all. And because of the technology requirements needed to make these reduced benefit calculations, families may not receive these benefits for weeks. I was just reading a New York Times article just a few minutes ago, and a SNAP state director in another state, I think they were back east, said that the technology requirements needed to make these adjustments is about 10,000 hours of people power. So we're not talking about little tweaks or changes that the states can make on the cuff. We're talking about real hardships that states are now forced to problem solve. And in Kansas, we're already 5 days behind on payments going out. So every day that we continue this is another day that families aren't getting the benefits that they really need to be able to purchase food. So when USDA figures out how much a family gets in SNAP, they assume that every household can spend about 30% of their income on food. So let's take a family of 5 earning about $1,950 a month. USDA assumes that they can put about $586 towards groceries. Bear with me on this math problem, okay? Normally, the maximum SNAP benefit for a family of that size is a little over $1,100. So they'd get the difference due to their income, right? They'd get about a little under $600. But under this guidance, that maximum allotment for their household size is cut in half. But the USDA is still assuming the family can cover that $586 in food. So that the benefit for this family for November will drop to just $5 for the entire month. If your eyes glaze over, like mine do when math is involved, our friends at the Iowa Hunger Coalition have created a calculator to help families determine what their partial benefits may be once they become available. And I'll drop that in the chat once I'm done talking. Next slide, please. So knowing that the benefits are going to be meager at best, I really do want to talk about the cost of delay, because we know that every day that passes without benefits makes life harder for families and our entire food system in Kansas. It doesn't just hurt individual households. Like I mentioned earlier, local grocery stores will see sales drops. Child care providers are watching families struggle to pay. And most importantly, the charitable food sector, our food banks, our church pantries, like many of you on this call, and community meal programs are being pushed to their absolute limits. I have been in several meetings in the last week, one in particular here in Wichita. A food pantry director was moved to tears, begging everyone in the room to please, could they even take off work to help, because they were so overwhelmed and overburdened. And this was 2 days before November 1st when SNAP benefits did not go out, right? So every day is more and more people needing to utilize food banks and food pantries. When SNAP, like I mentioned, when SNAP dollars don't flow, it is not just families who suffer, it's our entire economy. And every single day will just deepen this crisis and strain the organizations trying to hold the safety net together. A statistic that we use often in this work is that for every one meal provided by a food bank, SNAP provides 9. There is no way that the charitable sector can ramp up and meet that need. We need SNAP benefits to be fully funded and go out immediately. We needed them to go out on Saturday, but immediately is the next right time. Next slide, please. So what we can do right now, I'll just use Kansas Appleseed's piece. I know we're going to talk, you all are going to talk more about what you can do as your churches and congregations. But we would love if you could contact Congress and tell them we need immediate and full SNAP funding. Every call, every email, and every social media post really does matter. I will say just on Kansas Appleseed, we can't track what other organizations are doing. But we had over 1,300 calls and messages go out last week. And so we know that Congress is being forced to pay attention. Secondly, I know you'll hear more about food banks in a few minutes, but really help lift up the work that you all are already doing in our food banks. I know that you're already seeing the increased need now. We love that the Health Fund is supportive of this incredible work. Of course, the donations of money, food, or volunteer hours go such a long way. And then thirdly, sharing your story or the stories you hear is incredibly important. Whether it's through social media, an op-ed, letter to the editor, personal voices really do make this issue real right now. I know in my personal life, people haven't been paying. I've been doing SNAP work for 7 years, and folks haven't paid attention until they've now started hearing, personal stories on national television, right? I know Harvesters and their food bank network has been highlighted recently, and I've gotten a lot of phone calls from my family and others saying, "Did you know this is happening? Did you know that there's people going hungry in Kansas?" Well, yes, I did. And then finally, I would just say keeping the pressure on is the most important thing we can do right now, aside from actually feeding people in our communities. We know that Kansas values are to feed our neighbor, to make sure that we're all supported. I think of our state motto, ad astra per aspera, through hardships to the stars. Hardships don't just mean ourselves. Hardships, getting to the stars means pulling our neighbors alongside us and building it collectively. And I know that this is a really challenging time, but I hope that together we can still shoot for the same stars that everyone else is afforded. And I think that with that, I am done with my slides.
Thank you, Haley. Again, we'll leave questions towards the end of the presentation, but we will go ahead and move on and have Karen Siebert from Harvesters presenting next for us.
Thank you. You can go ahead and go to the next slide. I am from Harvesters, and we are the Feeding America Food Bank serving Northeast Kansas. And I know we have people on this call from all over the state, so I wanted to share this with you. Feeding America has the country divided up into making sure that every single county has a Feeding America Food Bank assigned to it. So you can see here which county you fall into. The little yellow counties at the very extreme northeast part of Kansas are served by the Second Harvest Food Bank out of St. Joe, Missouri. Second Harvest, like Harvesters, has a bi-state service area, so we serve both Kansas and Missouri. The pink part is served by Harvesters, and we serve 17 counties in Kansas and 10 in Missouri. And then the green counties are served by the Kansas Food Bank out of Wichita and several of their additional locations, most recently the new one that they have now in Garden City. But it's based in Wichita. I think if you could look at the bottom of that that map, you can see it has the 2020 census data on there and shows that with just the way populations have shifted over time, that the Kansas Food Bank and harvesters serve about the same number of people in those areas, but certainly the Kansas Food Bank has a much larger geographic area, which has its own unique challenges as they try to get to the farthest reaches of our state and some of these smaller communities, many of which you might be in. So I just wanted to share that so you know, if you want to reach out, anyone can certainly reach out to me, but you can also reach out to your particular food bank in your area that might be able to help you with ideas and that kind of thing. So you can go ahead and go to the next slide. I also wanted to start for a minute with what is a food bank, because I think a lot of people think of food banks as food pantries. And in our world, I know some people use those terms interchangeably, but in our world, they're distinct terms. So for us, a food bank is a large food collection and distribution facility. We don't do direct client service. Our clients are our member food pantries. So we are able to have a large warehouse, have a fleet of trucks, develop relationships with large local and national donors, be able to accept very large donations, then we turn around and distribute that food to our network of food pantries. And what that does is that allows us to develop that infrastructure and support that infrastructure, but then also allows the food pantries to do what they do best, which is client service. Because so often when people are coming to a food pantry, they have many more needs than just food. They might need education support. They might need a clothing closet. They might need utility help. And that personal connection with a person in the community is great for that and can help them navigate their needs. And we want them to be able to focus on that. And we'll focus on trying to find as much food as we can. But we also know that we are never able to meet the need for a local pantry. And so our local food pantries always do food drives on their own and do their collections in their own communities. And I know that some of you likely have a food pantry as part of your church's mission, and that's wonderful. And so maybe you can use some of these ideas as you are looking at supporting your own food pantry. If you don't have a pantry, there is likely a pantry in your community or at least nearby that I'm sure would love and is very needing of your support. So hopefully you could use some of these ideas in collaboration with them. And if there is no resource in your community and you see that as a need, we can certainly help you. Setting up a food pantry here before Christmas is probably a bit of a challenge, especially in light of a huge crisis. But putting in a blessing box or something like that can be fairly simple and can be a quick response is also an option. Next slide, please. I wanted to share with you one more thing. Haley did a great job of providing lots of stats about SNAP. This is actually a broader slide that I wanted to share. On this slide are 20 grocery bags. And a lot of people ask why we, as the charitable sector, get involved in advocacy for these government programs. And part of it is because of the importance of the government's response to hunger. So on this slide are 20 grocery bags, and they represent all of the food and nutrition assistance people in the US are getting from all sources, public and private. So my question, since we're on Zoom and not everybody's off mute, it's kind of rhetorical, but how many of these bags represent the government or public contribution through our tax dollars to food insecurity, and how many represent all the private charitable efforts? That would be donations from corporations, churches, foundations, civics groups, individuals to food banks, food pantries, and shelters. So first we'll start by taking away the bags, and if you could hit the space bar, Katie, taking away the bags that are the government's contribution. So SNAP is the largest program we have to feed the hungry people in this country. 1 in 8 people, 42 million, are on SNAP have received SNAP benefits. The Special Supplemental Nutrition Program for Women, Infants, and Children, known as WIC. Farmers Market Nutrition Program, the Senior Farmers Market Nutrition Program, school meals. More than 11 million children daily get free and reduced breakfast and lunch. The Emergency Food Assistance Program, known as TFAP. The Commodity Supplemental Food Program, which is senior boxes, CSFP. the Child and Adult Care Feeding Program, providing after-school meals and snacks, the Summer Food Service Program, the Summer EBT Program, and disaster relief is another one. A lot of people don't know how much we're involved in that. And then at the end, what you have is one grocery bag. And that is the entirety of the charitable sector's contribution to food security in this country. So when legislators discuss cutting these nutrition programs and suggest that the charitable sector can pick up the slack, this shows you the capacity of the charitable sector to do that, which is why we are so worried about the situation right now. Another number, I'm not sure, I think Haley might have shared, but for the state of Kansas, we have lost about $33 million of purchasing power, grocery purchasing power in the month of November. There is no way that the charitable sector has access to $33 million worth of food or funds or anything like that. So it is a bit overwhelming. And next slide, please. But again, this is the entirety of the nutrition programs, is that 1 in 20. But again, that other figure that Haley shared is that for every one meal a food bank is providing, SNAP provides 9. So this it does feel rather overwhelming. I get it. But this presentation is not just about what the problem is, but about how you can help. And it really is simple. You can feed your neighbor. And I think that's what we're all going to have to do. And there's lots of ways to do that. I think we have, again, a range of folks on this call. Some of you might have food pantries in your church run by paid staff. Some could just be volunteer-led pantries. Others could support the church and the community. Others might not be connected. So we have entry points and sort of ideas for all of those kinds of things. I really do like to think about our church partners sort of as banks as well. We have clothing banks and we have food banks, but you're really banks holding a lot of goodwill and a lot of good works. And we really need to tap into that, especially now. Sometimes you're doing that directly by supporting individuals and organizations doing that direct service. So wanted to talk with you about several ways that your churches can respond to this current crisis, either by expanding the work that you're currently doing or getting additional resources for others who are maybe doing that direct service work. I would have one note of caution. I know people are so excited. I mean, they're just so motivated. Excited is not the word. Motivated to help in their communities at this time. But if you're working with a pantry connected to your church or one in your community, please reach out to them first with a few of these ideas, if some of them are inspiring to you, and just make sure and to see what would work best for them. We do a lot of disaster relief at the food bank, and we often talk about the disaster after the disaster. A lot of well-meaning people inundate communities, after a flood or a hurricane. They send water and clothing and household items, but the recipient communities often don't have anyone to organize all those items or anywhere to store them. And you just want to make sure that what you're offering is what's needed and that you're not creating more work for your local pantry. So please engage in those conversations before you get too excited about any of the things, just to make sure it's what's needed in your community. Next slide, please. We talk about 4 things that our food bank needs to achieve our mission to feed the hungry. And I think this really applies for any food pantry that is doing this work. We need people to give food, give time, give money, and give voice. And I have on there give voice ×2, because I actually think that we need to give voice in 2 different kinds of ways. I think we need to start with giving voice to those people who are facing food insecurity. And then the second is to use our voices on their behalf, as Haley was talking, to talk to elected officials, to write letters to the editor, to do something with that information that we have. But I think it's very important that we start with the people in need and giving them voice. Because the first thing to do in order to mobilize people is to educate them about the issue. All the information that Haley had is great. And we actually are hoping to put together some simple bullet points that you could use, about SNAP and about the situation that you could put in your bulletins every Sunday, to help people understand who's hungry in your community. But also behind each number is a story. And that's really what people need to hear to engender empathy and spur action. So I think one of the most effective campaigns along these lines that we've done is a paper plate campaign. And lucky for you, it's cheap and it's really easy. So if your church has a pantry, or you can connect to one in your community, just first of all, see if they would be willing to work with you on this. But it's really pretty simple. You just buy a bunch of paper plates, and the trusted pantry volunteers, probably someone that they know, hands out paper plates in the food pantry line and asks people to answer a question and write their answer on the plate. It could be something like, what does this food mean to you? What brings you to the food pantry today? To just give them an opportunity to tell their story, because so often the message that's out in the media, especially related to SNAP, is all the tagline, waste, fraud, and abuse, waste, fraud, and abuse. And to have people say, this is my story, and I want to share why I'm here and the struggles that I'm facing, I think can be very empowering for people. We usually ask them to share their first name, if they're comfortable with that, and they might be less so in a really small community, but also their age. And if you'd like to use the plates in the future for outreach to elected officials, we've done that before, use them as letters, then you would also want to include a zip code on there so you know who their representative is. And you could use that. So if you can go to the next slide, these are a few that we received a few years ago when we did a campaign like this. And I think one of the things that's so impactful is that no one sees handwriting anymore. So often everything is generated online and it is typed up. But you can't deny this is an individual who has this experience and is sharing their story. This was Sam, who said, if harvesters didn't have a food pantry, even though I have a full-time job, there would be months where I would have to decide between food, utilities, and medication. Next slide. And this one is from Irma. It says, the food that's received once a month is so appreciated when one is on a limited income. It's the difference between going hungry and going to bed feeling fulfilled. I am 85 years old. Next slide. And Amanda said, I come to the food pantry because I don't receive food stamps, and my husband just got back from a tour overseas and is having trouble finding work. And the pantry helps so much in feeding our children. Next slide. And then Daniel just said, it's help. So you can see the impact. It's so compelling to see someone's heartfelt words in their own handwriting. And it really is such an easy thing to do. People are standing in line or waiting in line in their car. They're usually happy to do it. And I know what most of your budgets are like. It's super cheap. You actually don't want the nice plates because they're hard to write on. You don't want the kind that are coated, with wax so the fried chicken grease doesn't go through. You want the cheapest plates you can get. And then once you have the plates, like I said, we did this and we used them as letters to elected officials and took them in. Like we had a stack of 400 that we took into a senator's office and to share, like, these are the people that are affected by these programs. But also you can use them in your own outreach. You can hang them in the narthex church, hang them by the food drive barrel in a local business, include images of plates in your bulletins, on your social media posts. You can print them off. We did this. We took a picture of one on of them on placemats and printed them out on like 11 by 17 paper. And when we had board meetings, we would have dinner and we had those as placemats at every single person's table plate. So they would know, like, you're getting this food tonight, but think about Irma who doesn't have enough to eat. It can be very powerful. And then again, we used them as letters with elected officials. And then hopefully those stories, sharing the voices of those people facing food insecurity, will help mobilize the people in your church to help. And then, I don't know the timing of all of this, but, you could gather and share those stories in November, sort of setting the stage for Advent, and, possibly use the 4 weeks of Advent to encourage acting upon what people have learned during November, and maybe including, you know, applicable Bible verses, children's stories, that kind of thing. And what's handy is our calls to action. There are 4, like the 4 weeks of Advent. So you have the 4 Sundays of Advent. You have give food, give money, give time, and then give voice. And then that give voice action would be about you using your voice to share with people, with elected officials, the importance of this. And, you know, moving forward into the legislative session in Kansas, there are things that they do at the state level as well that impact these programs. So if you get a mini grant from Health Ministries Fund, you could use that seed money to leverage support for hunger relief in your community. Again, you buy some paper plates, you have about $495 left. So it's a pretty good deal. Use that as a matching fund opportunity. I will say competitions work really well with food drives. I don't know that that's really in the Christmas spirit, but we had a huge competition one time between KU and MU fans in Kansas City to show which were the most generous, and Harvesters really was the winner in that one. But MU did win, and as a Jayhawk, I was really sad to admit that, but in the end, it generated a huge number of donations because people just, you know, have fun with that. You can help mount a food or fun drive with jars and businesses around town, or boxes in local stores and businesses to do food drives. If you have youth and kids in your church that you want to get engaged, you could have them decorate the boxes with most needed items lists, and maybe some of those paper plate stories. You know, that can be a way to make it an intergenerational activity. During Sunday school, you could also ask, I forgot, advance the slides, please. That's just food drive picture. That's not that unique. But the next one, during Sunday school, you could ask children and youth to color pictures, or like on the right supportive cards that pantries can include in their bags or boxes of food they distribute to seniors or to families, just to have a little bit of hope in there as well as the food. I do want to say it's good to have some guidance on there just to make sure that the messages are appropriate. So sometimes we just write the messages and have the kids sign their names and that kind of thing. You could even print off your own cards as well. I just did this morning actually with ChatGPT. They can make coloring pages quite easily. So that's an option. Again, like if you could help stock or build a blessing box in your community, engage other groups like Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts that do this kind of work a lot, especially in this time of crisis. They might be willing to do another one. I know the Boy Scouts often do food drive in the spring, but you know, if they could go around and leave bags at people's mailboxes and ask them to leave them filled with food the next weekend, they could come around and pick them up. It's a great way to get the families, get folks involved. You could also go to the next slide, please. Suggest that families have their own packing events at their family gatherings where they're bringing people together. In addition to asking them to bring the green bean casserole, you could ask them to bring a couple of extra cans of green beans or the corn. And you know, this is an example of, this is available on Harvester's website under our volunteering section. But this is a suggested holiday box. And so you could see how many you could pack. If everyone could bring that, you could even have a little packing event with your family on Thanksgiving and then get that delivered to the food pantry. The next slide, we also have some other suggested packing opportunities. So this is a barbecue chicken burrito bowl package. So this can make this, all of these items together, you can make this meal. And as you can see there, you can download a recipe card. And then there's also a video, so you can include the link in the bag for a family. So you can give the family all of this and they can make this meal with that food. So that's also kind of fun for people to pack those up and make those. And the next slide is another similar one that we do. It's an 8-can chicken chili recipe. Again, you can print out the recipe card and provide that. And all of those resources are available on our website that you can use. And then the last one I'll share is fun as well. A lot of people have been moved to do, and it's birthday in a box, because a lot of these families don't have money for a regular meal, much less a birthday celebration. And this is a non-perishable thing that the food pantry can have when there's someone with a birthday, that they can give that to them. I was not aware that you can make a birthday cake without eggs, but you can use flavored soda to make a birthday cake. It really does work. And then we include candles and balloons and a banner, plates and napkins, everything they would need to have a party, just like all the other kids. And people enjoy, bringing all the pieces for that and putting those together too. So those are just some of the ideas. You can search around on our website, but there's all sorts of ways to engage, large and small, to help your pantry and see what's most needed in your community in this time when we just need so many resources. And I think that's it.
Oh, we do have one question about where we can find those, Karen. So there's probably a few that are looking at them now, but with that, thank you both. There were some really great tips in there that I felt were very helpful. And again, Haley, for all of the background that you provided on what's really happening right now with the SNAP benefits, and as well as the need for support to our local pantries and the food banks. So with that, we wanted to get in a little bit more as far as response that we're planning for the right now. So we recognize that many of you are already working in locations where the need is feeling very stretched. And so that was one of the pieces, as Jackie mentioned, we really want to walk alongside you in this, help provide you with not only some financial support, which I recognize is not going to solve all of the world's problems when we're talking about the many grants that we are, but we really do see this as an opportunity to leverage and bring people along within your community for you to operate in that leadership role and use this as a way to either lift your voice and help bring awareness to others, as well as thinking about ways to engage maybe differently. So I think that's what I wanted to make sure that we started from. But I think that we also recognize that, and I think this is just a good reminder, that we are called to feed the hungry as an expression of justice, mercy, and love. And that this is why we're doing this, and taking care of our neighbors is such a crucial part as our role as Christians. And so I think that we just want to ground ourselves in that piece of us, and the important role that we can provide to those within our community, for seeing that face of hope and love. We as churches also play a unique role in addressing food insecurity within our communities. And so we're really seeing these mini grants as a way to provide support to your church and also community-based practical food access efforts. While also thinking, one of the other things we've really talked about is we want to see this as a catalyst for your communities to really think about, this is an immediate need. We know that, but they're also considering we don't know how long this may last, and also how stretched everyone is right now. How do we think about building a more sustainable food system for our communities, and thinking longer term? Why it's important to use this moment in time, but also thinking about how we can build upon that for the future. So how the program will work, we're going to get into the nitty gritty now about the mini grants that we're offering. So these are really only just for our Kansas Healthy Congregation churches, in part because of what I just mentioned. We really want to come alongside you, provide other types of resourcing and supports, such as Appleseed and Harvesters, Kansas Food Bank, to really help couple some of these resources together so that you have awareness and know how this is reflective of that. So it is only for our Kansas Healthy Congregation churches. And this will be a match opportunity for churches for up to $500. So you can request $500. And when we're saying match, we're meaning like, it's not that we're requiring a monetary match. We're talking about volunteer hours, in-kind support, as well as monetary contributions. And so, and we're also, it's somewhat of a on your honor. So we're really just wanting to set you up for having an expectation. You may also be able to use this and leverage it within conversations in your communities and in your congregation and saying, we have an opportunity to have this money. The request is for a match, and then that may help you be able to generate additional interest from those within your church and community. The other piece that I would say, similar for those of you who were around during the part of our Healthy Congregations program during COVID response, we're really anticipating a really quick rolling proposal acceptance. So as soon as you get those in, those will be reviewed very promptly. And then our hope is to get those distributed funds within 2 weeks. So that is the goal for the program. There may be a few times we have to come back and ask a couple final questions, but we're really trying to keep the process pretty simple. So then that way you're able to get those grant dollars quickly and back into your community. So as I mentioned before, we were talking about some potential ideas. Again, we know that many of you are already working with your food pantries. You may already have yours. You have your blessing boxes that you're doing. But also the pieces that we were talking about is like leveraging your existing efforts and thinking a little broader. So what are some opportunities that might make sense for you within your church, as well as within your community? So as Karen mentioned, maybe it's a food drive within the church. Also thinking about what food-based programs are occurring. I know many of you are already working or have been working on like summer food service programs or partnering with your churches or with your communities and schools in different ways. And so it may be extending a backpack program through this time of year just so kids go home with food. Or one of the things that we've heard recently is putting together some granola bars and other things for the school nurses and the social workers within the school so they know who these children are who may be in need and help provide those additional resourcing. One of the other things that we've heard more recently about are food waste recoveries. One of the things that we're talking about, and you all are in communities where you know people in different ways than some communities do. And so I think there's real opportunity here to consider how you work like with your local grocery store. Are there ways to get shelf stable foods that are about to expire to then be able to be donated? And maybe they need some help with transportation. To Karen's point, some of those other pieces are the volunteer hours to come alongside and really help navigate those pieces of supporting the community in that way. So those are some of the other things that we've heard mentioned. And then also the distribution infrastructure. So if there's like a place to collect them and also help with distribution, many of you have larger spaces within your fellowship halls to consider utilizing for distribution and helping put things together. So those would be other ideas. And then as Karen also mentioned, those opportunities to really have engagement on this issue and lift your voice about what is happening, who this is affecting, and the challenges that you're experiencing and seeing with your neighbors and those that attend your church, and to really be a voice for that. So those were some of the things that we were saying for ideas. Again, we're not requiring all of this, but we really want to see this as a chance for you to think about how this is a moment in time for us to really think about how we can leverage our voice and our assets to bring additional growth and change to our communities, hopefully for the positive. I know a lot of this feels very overwhelming and challenging, but to Karen's point, I think now is a real opportunity to do that. So within the food pantry, I think some of the pieces that we were talking about, donating money, food, or time to the pantries, partnerships for the food drives. I think that Karen went over a number of these already. The volunteering piece, I know many of you are already doing that, but I think that's also helpful. And then having pop-up pantry sites and the blessing boxes. Or the special offerings. If you haven't already committed, if there's some of those, I know that during the Advent season, there are some of those special offering times that are done through your congregations. That may be a great time to say, hey, let's lift up our food pantries or our food banks. One of the pieces that I've heard Karen mention, and I think it's really helpful to also recognize, is that With making donations to our local food banks and our pantries, they're able to typically be able to use the money to stretch further because they're able to buy in larger quantities, and that helps the money go further. And so right now, as we're trying to think about feeding as many as we can, those are areas that we really need to consider. And additionally, with that idea in mind, I think one of the things that Karen also mentioned is that so many, and you all probably recognize this time of year is really crucial for annual giving, for congregation, for food pantries. And so while this need is immediate, we know that it may take away if not done correctly for the overall giving. And so we really need to think about how we build it on top of what's already happening and how we help so that we're not stretching the food banks even further in the food pantries longer term if we can help it. So using it maybe it as a way to generate new giving, and not taking the current giving that's done at the end of the year for this immediate need without there being some sort of support coming along behind it. Again, we already went over this where the local food banks are located so that there's access there. But I did want to make sure that we had each website available for you all. You saw on Karen's slides where the maps are located, where your communities, who your food banks are. But I wanted to make sure you had that in the slide deck as well. And then, as I mentioned on some of these, the weekend meal kits, breakfast options, and then also helping with little pantries and share tables, encouraging school districts to think about that. And also if there's kids within your congregation and community, ways that you can work collectively on that. As we mentioned to the food waste recovery, I think I went through some of this pretty well, but I think considering ways to have those drop points as well for the food rescue, the surplus, would be within your little pantries and mobile food ministry stations or within your blessing boxes. And then also, again, the transporting of this stuff and having something in place to help with collection and then transporting are some of the pieces that I think oftentimes don't require the monetary components. It's like the volunteer time to take and run those programs. And oftentimes you all are already doing so many of these pieces. So there might just be a few add-ons as far as how that could look and work together. Again, the food sources here as far as where to food rescue networks, there's links on here to consider for where you can go. One other things that we know some groups are doing is the Kansas Hunters Feeding the Hungry. So for those that want to donate a deer or elk to participating meat processors, that's a place that they can look to. Also where the distribution sites. So again, that might be just another resource to make sure you all had and were using as you needed. Finally, on the distribution infrastructure, really looking at the storage, pickup, and delivery hubs. So some groups I know in the past for the summer food service programs have used all of their money for the like refrigerator units or freezers to be able to hold and distribute food through that. This may be something to consider with that $500 if it makes sense. Setting up some infrastructure for longer term for housing food, shelving, things like that. We know some groups have done that. This may be that if that's where the immediate need is. But also if the option to use that money really to think about the bigger picture. So again, those are some of the areas for implementation considerations, who you're working with within health departments, food banks, pantries. Focus on shelf-stable food. I think that's one piece that we have heard more often, and I think it's really important that while we want to get food to everyone, make sure that it's shelf-stable, so then that way we're also not chancing people getting sick. I know it's important to feed them, but we want to make sure that it's done right. And then mobilizing volunteers to effectively manage distribution flow. So again, I think some of the pieces, and I do also want to point out the donation drive events, somewhat what Karen talked about as well here. Potentially participating, many of you have food, farm, and policy councils. That would be another place to volunteer your time and be part of the larger collective who are working on some of these food security issues within your community. And then raising awareness about the food and food justice and hunger, and then the collection of the stories, as we mentioned before. Again, the Food Action Network, the link below, that's really where you'll see where the food policy councils are located within different communities. So that's another resource. Okay, so we did this one already, so I don't need to go over that one again, but that was a great story that was shared here. And I think, again, we really see this as using this as more than a grant and lifting our voices to strengthen the current food ministries, develop community partners, raise awareness of the growing need, and then also foster innovation and collaboration within your communities and raising your voice. So one of the other pieces as we're working together that we also wanted to highlight, and again, the resourcing component, is aligning with Advent and the congregational life. We know right now is the month for stewardship. So this could also be a great time to think about what you're stewarding at this point in time, but also how this ties in with Advent. We are having conversations with some of our colleagues at the conference office, specifically within the Mercy and Justice, to think about how there could be some different ways that we could collaborate on some messaging, including some bulletin inserts, devotionals as well for the holiday season, and using that. We're also going to be working at the Health Fund on providing some additional resources. Maybe it's like helping with a campaign for, again, special offerings, or trying to work to increase donations to your local food pantry during the holiday season. So if there's ways to come alongside them and help them while they're meeting the immediate need, maybe it's coming alongside and helping them do that fundraising campaign with them. And then again, it's the storytelling pieces. I think all of those are so crucial to helping others understand what the needs really are existing within your communities and who it is that has the need. So I think we talked on this too. Karen did a really great job and went into depth on some of this stuff. So I think those were some of the ones that we wanted to highlight. It may be a time to engage youth as you can as well. And it could be outside of the church, maybe those within your youth groups as well, thinking about your laities, and then how you can work with your lay teams. And then building long-term fundraising strategies. And then again, maybe a paper plate campaign, if that makes sense. We also would love to be part of that. So as you guys are collecting those stories, we want to hear about them and what's happening within your communities and elevate those stories even more too. So please share those with us as you're putting together your proposals for response on that. There is a portion within the request for proposals that outlines like what type of story sharing you anticipate, storytelling and sharing you anticipate doing, and how you can share those with us. Again, as we've said, we think that's a really important part of the work that you're doing, is really highlighting, again, the response, the challenges that communities are facing, and how we can come together and provide hope in challenging situations. Okay, so here's an outline for what will be covered within the proposal. So after we get done with the webinar today, the next piece will be to, we'll send out a link for the proposal form. We will just need, it's a really brief proposal form, but we'll use our online system that we use for our other grants. This will not be under our Healthy Congregations grant renewal program, just because it will help expedite the timing for how quickly we can get these grants reviewed and money back out the door. So again, we'll want a title and description, the request amount up to $500, who you're planning to serve and benefit, how long the timeline will be, And we'll talk about, I would say from 3 to 6 months would be the maximum that we're seeing this for just this portion of the grant. And then what's your plan for the matching? How will you meet that? Is it through volunteerism? Is it going to be in-kind match, or will it be monetary donations? And then we also would love, as Karen mentioned, I think a crucial piece of this is really probably first step is reaching out to those within your community that are partners on this, and looking at how you can work together. So use this as a time for that as well, to have some very important discussions about how that support can look. So talking with your local food pantries, maybe there are other churches also working and having their own food pantries. Are there ways to work with them? Your schools, your health departments, others who are United Ways, your community foundations. This can be a really broad group, but it would be really helpful to start having a conversation about how that works to collaborate together and meet the needs of your local communities. And then what type of role, who will be leading the project specifically within your church? And how will that leadership be shared or developed with others? And then, as I mentioned, we do have a component in here about how you will gather stories or feedback or ideas that you have around that. Maybe it is the paper plate campaign, or if it's a social media campaign, or you're going to write letters on postcards to your delegation. Those would all be ways that you could consider doing story collection and telling. And so then the final two pieces will be your budget, which is how the money will be used. And then you can also put in there, if there's matching dollars specifically that you're anticipating, you can put that as well within your budget if you want to. Otherwise, just put how your $500 will be used. One thing I do want to mention is that we really, oh, that's a great, I'll get to that. So I just saw a question on here. So I think that one other piece that I did want to lift up is that we really do want to see this as more than just a one-time use of money. And when I say that, I'm meaning we don't want to see the money going to just community meals. We know that a lot of you are doing that and offering those, and those are great, but we would really like for there to be a concerted effort to work on meeting the needs a little bit longer, and how you can do that, versus just a one-time meal, and use this to build opportunities longer term, which is why we're encouraging working with your other partners. Again, not minimalizing that, but I think as we're talking about for food, how that can look. And then how you will involve in your congregation to work on food justice efforts will be the last plan. So then the next steps will be we'll review the proposals, consider, like, think about the assets and gifts and gaps in your teams, submit your application, and then we will begin developing those resources and share with you. So that was going to be the other portion that I would say that we wanted to highlight, is that there will be other resources that we're going to be sending to you all regularly over the next couple of weeks. This is happening really quickly, as you can imagine, as we've learned more about what's happening with the federal shutdown and then also the response for SNAP. So we really started having these conversations last week, so you can see how quickly we're trying to respond to that. So that being said, we're really working hard to try to help and come alongside you and provide you with other resourcing so that you feel comfortable with doing these efforts. Okay, so I see a couple of questions in the chat that I did want to get to here. Did I miss any other slides? I think those are the last of our slides here. So I'm going to just pull us into, okay. So I see too, if others have questions, that's fine. So the volunteer hours, as I mentioned, if you're saying that you're planning on volunteer hours, we're not as concerned as far as it's like an hour by hour match or it's worth this monetary amount. But I would see it being that that's where you're just saying this is how much we're going to focus on this component of it. So I don't know that we're worried as much about the monetary match, but more just saying that's where we're going to focus. And so if that's what you plan to do, it doesn't need to be like written out every dollar that you're anticipating on the volunteerism. I would be more like curious about what you anticipate for the volunteerism and how you plan to use that versus like the monetary piece. that makes sense. Yes, the entire grant amount. So the question is, can the entire grant amount be directly donated to your local food pantry? Absolutely. But I will say, like, while we, and a lot of groups probably will choose to do this, but I think too, are there ways to elevate it and say you go to your church groups or within your Sunday school or during services and say, we have $500 we need to match, and see if that might be an opportunity to match that money during that service or other ways. Or if it's you're talking to other groups within your community and saying, we're planning to put $500 to our local food pantry, are there additional resources that you would be willing to match with it as well? And so I think that's where we're saying, absolutely use the money for those projects and to your local food pantries. But how do you leverage those resources? Because we know $500 is not going to go very far. So I think that's where we're really seeing this as a catalyst to come alongside you and help you think about ways to leverage additional resources within your community. Okay, any other questions that we have from the group? They were great questions that we had so far. So right after we finish here, we will go ahead and send these slide decks out to everyone who signed up for the webinar today. And then we will also send a link to where the request for proposals will come through. So Eric, I see your message correctly there. So there will be a link that will give you that says, this is where you will go to apply in the form to submit there. We are happy to help you. As Jackie mentioned, Jeff and Jackie and I are available to help you with any questions that you may have. You can email us, you can reach out to us, and we will try to get back to you as soon as we can. So I will, like, there will be times that we're in and out of the office over the next few weeks, and we'll get back to you as soon as possible. Yes, the recorded webinar will be posted as well. And then again, it will be sent out to everyone too, so that you have all those links and resources that we mentioned today during the webinar. Y'all have some great questions today, so thank you. And also thank you for staying with us a little bit longer. Oh, I see one more question, sorry. If this suspension of benefits extends for another month or two, will we be able to apply for a second grant? At this time, we don't have additional resourcing that we can provide to this. So I think that's the other piece, is that really it's going to be a one-time opportunity for these grant dollars. Karen, that's a really great question. Unfortunately, again, the need is so great as a foundation, we can't come close to offering what's needed, and we're just trying to come alongside and try to provide a little bit of support to help move groups further down the line, and especially in trying to think about ways to leverage within your communities additional resourcing. So right now, that's where we see our response, that we probably will not be able to do a second round of funding. Are there any other questions that we have from the group? Well, thank you all so much for making time to be on this call today. I thought a special thank you to Harvesters and to Kansas Appleseed. Both of you, they were great. They were very quick to respond. I'll be candid. We just talked about this last Friday, and they were able to put slides together and do this really quickly. So with that, I will go ahead and close our session for today. Again, reach out to us to Jackie, Jeff Gamber on our staff, or myself, with any questions, or if you need anything further over the next few weeks. And thank you all so much for the work that you are doing on this. We really, really appreciate it, and know that it's meeting such a crucial need right now. Have a great rest of your day. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.